Do you know this song? Hey, how you doing? I'm Oak Felder. I'm a record producer, and I have been lucky enough to work with a whole bunch of amazing artists, including the awesome Sabrina Carpenter. You achieve a level of mainstream success, and that's definitely what's happening to Sabrina right now. Like, I feel like people knew who she was before. You know, obviously she just had this monster project come out. As a result of that, I've been getting a lot of requests to sort of go back over some of the songs that I'd done with her. This particular record was a song that I did for her on her Singular Act 1 project. It was a song called Sue Me. Before every session, you know, the artist and the producer and the writer, they all kind of sit down and we start to like ruminate and talk a little bit on what's going on in our lives. And somebody in the room, not going to mention who, mentioned that they were getting sued.
Sue me mean? Who are you begging to sue you?
Well, someone already did, so that's why I wrote it.
And then I think Sabrina, with her classic humor, was like, we should just write a song called Sue Me. And this is the original session for Sue Me right here. The production typically happens in a different session. And when I'm done with the production, I bounce it into a 2-track, and then I open a new session and record all my vocals to the new session. And the reason for that is because I like to commit to the idea of the production, because I believe that music is a snapshot of a moment. And as that track is being created, what's being created is a snapshot of that moment, the energy in the room. So what you have here is a 2-track of the production. And immediately on the 2-track of the production, I put 3 plugins. And I'm going to showcase each of them right now. One of them is a plugin called Spiff. It's made by a company called OX Sound. I've actually talked about this plugin before. Basically what it does is it sort of brings out the transient in any sonic, but it does it in like machine learning AI way so that it doesn't distort the wave, it doesn't distort the recording, it doesn't distort the production. It pulls out exactly the transients that you want to pull it out in. Transients, kicks, snares, hi-hats, things that have an impact. We'll let you hear it without. And this is what. So your transients are turned up immediately. Right after that, I had the Ozone Exciter plugin. I want to say I used 8 or 7 when we did this track. It's part of the Isotope suite of stuff. If you're a producer, you have this. You need to have it. If you don't, you need to have this. What I like to do is excite sort of the high mid range with a triode excitation. Basically what that does is that kind of takes the wave of that section and it kind of gives a little bit more detail to that part of the frequency. Now, I do that for a very specific reason. We tend to be very vocal-centric, especially producers that do pop music and R&B music. The vocal sits in that range. It sits like, you know, all the way down to like 1K, sometimes all the way down as low as 500. And so as you're working and as you're mixing, we're constantly sort of etching out that frequency while we're mixing the vocal. And before you know it, you've kind of gutted that part of your production. I would add, admittedly, maybe a little bit too much. And this is sort of my final version of that. I put it on the 2-track because I know that while I'm mixing the final vocal or the final rough, I'm going to end up losing a little bit. Let's do it out. So this is immediately you have a little bit more presence in that space. And then at the very end of the whole chain on my 2-track, I put the Oxford limit. But I don't hit it too hard. I have a preset called This Is the Way. If you know anything about me, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And this is the preset. And honestly, I have this up a little too high. You don't necessarily want there to be much gain reduction. So without these 3 plugins, my 2-track sounds good. But then with these 3 plugins, we have more punchiness, we have more presence, and the track overall is a little bit more consistent in terms of volume. Why do I do this before I start recording? Because I want to have this on as I'm recording. I want to have this in my mind because I want to start from this point. People don't realize, especially with today's technology, you tend to craft the sonic of your song as you're recording it. Your end loop plugins are going to should just be applied so that you can work with that in mind. I'm going to pull up the God particle. When I mix with it on because I want to know what it's going to sound like while it's on. If I mix my entire record and I throw it on there, then your levels get messed up and things change. So it's always a good idea to have your end of the line plugin active from the very beginning. So that's the technical aspect of the 2-track part. If this were a session I did today, then this would be in a track stack. As of right now, here in this space, they're just kind of all out in the open, which is cool. I mean, it's an extended view of the entire production. First of all, Sabrina Carpenter is one of the best vocalists I've ever worked with. And I've worked with some pretty fucking amazing vocalists. I keep hearing people say that she needs to do an R&B project. I think that'd be a lot of fun to do because she's got the chops for it. I mean, she's got a fucking fantastic voice.
You missed a lot.
Now, if you look at this
Remember when you...
I have 4 passes of her vocal. I comped her vocal. I mean, comping happens quite a bit, but it wasn't comping out of a necessity to comp. She only did 4 passes of her verse. I could have used any one of these passes in its entirety and it would have sounded amazing. But honestly, I didn't have to comp this vocal. It would have sounded incredible regardless. I'm doing a high pass filter up to the 80. I got a C4 multipressor on here that's pushing some of the 4K, 8K, 16K range. Add a little crispiness. I got like a vintage warmer on this bad boy. Vintage warmer is a plugin made by, I think they're called PSP Audio. It's a compressor that adds a little bit of saturation. It literally warms up the vocal.
Well, did you ever think that it was hard for me to walk it off like nothing happened nonchalant?
Okay. And so on this particular vocal, I made a weird fucking choice, and I'm sitting here trying to remember why I did it. I added Air EQ Earth to her voice. And I think I did it because I like the lower range of her tone. It's like this boosted sort of woofy tone. And her voice in the upper register is so sweet that when you add this lower sort of frequency, I did it in a weird way though. Today, I think I would use Surfer EQ for the same function, but I used Earth to sort of boost the 800 range in her voice. And that added like a lower tone to it. I'm gonna do with and without so you can hear the difference.
Well, did you ever think that it was hard for me?
So a little lighter in the tone. You can't really feel that lower part of the energy.
Well, did you ever think that it was hard for me to walk?
It's subtle. It's really subtle. Admittedly, it's very
Well,
subtle.
did you ever think that it was hard for me?
That's like lighter somehow.
Well, did you ever think that it was hard for me?
And that's heavier. Because her voice is so pretty, I wanted to add a little bit of weight to it. And that's the thing about production. Like, a lot of times you end up using plugins in ways that they're not intended. I don't think that plugin is intended to use for vocal. 1,000 other things that I could have used again. Surfer EQ from Sound Radix would have been a great option here because it would have followed that low tone around. And then the Logic compressor. I say all the time, the Logic compressor and the Logic reverb are my salt and pepper. I put them on every single vocal track. They are the most transparent versions of these plugins. The Logic compressor is like, hey man, we compress. That's all we do. And not only that, the Logic compressor in terms of like system resources, I mean, you know, you could put multiple instances on like 50, 1,000 different tracks. It would run beautifully. So this is why I like the Logic compressor. What else did I put on this damn thing? I put Chroma Verb
Well,
on
did
this
you
one.
ever think that it was hard for me?
When you're doing your reverb, it's a good idea to sort of have your near and your far field reverb. In real life, when you speak, when you make sounds, when you hear sounds, the reverberation that you hear are the things that bounce immediately off of you that's around you and then bounce off of what's far away from you. When you're recording and when in the music sense, you should kind of be thinking in the same way. So you should be thinking, what's a close field reverb that I can use and then what's a far field reverb that I can use? And you should kind of use both with your vocal. And sometimes when you want your vocal to be more intimate, then you're gonna focus more on your near field stuff. Then when you want it to feel bigger and grander or washed out or whatever, then you'll focus more on your far field stuff. This is my tracking vocal, but this is also what ended up being the end result vocal for my rough bounce. And so I used the Chroma Verb for the near field vocal. And what I did was I did a low pass filter on it to kind of get rid of a lot of the tinniness and shininess since enough of that was in her natural voice.
Did you ever think that it was hard for me to walk it off like nothing happened nonchalantly? I got you feeling like, I got you feeling right, I got you feeling like.
All right, so let's get to some of these vocals.
That's my shape, I made the shadow, that's my name, don't wear it.
3 stack, 1 pan left, 1 pan right, 1 in the center. It's always good to have a vocal in the center. People make that mistake. Let me track 4 vocals and then pan them left and right and left and right and left and right, and then everything's like kind of out on the wides and like in the periphery. Always have a vocal in the center, man. Give your listener a focal point to like fixate on.
Myself can't be illegal, so sue me.
Even that.
For looking so pretty tonight.
Right in the middle.
Wearing your favorite color under the lights.
And then these on the
For
outside.
moving on, doing everything right.
I got a low octave
So
happening here.
sue me for being good friends with your friends and running into you the place that we met.
I mean, oh my God, she's singing the shit out this record. She sounds amazing. I think all of this was like single pass. One of my favorite parts of this vocal is this bad boy. This is a choir. It's not actually a choir, it's actually us in the room with one of these this actual mic doing gang vocals in harmony. Right? And so we just you can hear me struggling to hit that damn note. So I'll put all together. terms of what I got on the chain, there's not really anything going on. I mean, I'm cutting a lot of the low end because we tracked it in the room. Got a multi-pressor on here, compressor after that, a little bit of reverb from Space Designer. Sample delay. So sample delay, basically this is a Haas effect. What I'm doing is I'm delaying the signal on the right speaker 190 milliseconds from the left speaker, and it creates a widening effect. It's called the Haas effect. Oh, and some EQ. Some SSL EQ. I'm going to showcase on here. I love the arrangement of this section in the bridge. I'm going to play it a cappella without the track.
I guess I'm all to ignore.
Come on.
Pick up that jaw off the floor.
Listen to this run, bro. Come on, man. You need to do R&B projects. That girl singing her ass off. I love this song. It's one of my favorite songs I've ever recorded. I had a lot of fun working on this project. Yeah, so that's Sue Me, Sabrina Carpenter. Go take a listen to that record. Shout out to the homegirl Sabrina.